So in this video we'll be going through how to calculate the three averages, so the mean, the mode, the median and the range from tabulated data. Before we get started on working out the averages from frequency data and group data tables, it's important that we kind of refresh ourselves with how to actually work out the mean, median and the mode from a string of data. Now when I mean a string of data, I just mean like a list of numbers. Now the mean, to work out the mean, it's just a case of adding up all the numbers and dividing by the number of numbers. Now theoretically, with all of these three averages, you can work out, if you've got a list of numbers, you can work out each of the three averages from that set of data. However, you will find that mathematically there is always going to be one average calculation that's going to be better or deemed as being better than the other two. However, in a maths test or in a textbook, you might find that regardless of which one is better, you might get asked to work out one, if not two or three of the averages. So when's best to use the mean? Well, theoretically you should be using the mean when you have one, numerical data, because obviously you have to have number data, can't use it with worded data, and it's better to use when the range is small. So when the numbers are very, very similar, that's when the mean will give you a more accurate average. Now the median, this is where you ordered the data in numerical order. Often it's smallest to largest, however you can do largest to smallest if you want to go rogue, and select the number that's in the middle. Now if you find that there are two numbers in the middle, the easiest way of working out the number that's in between those two is obviously use your common sense. But if that proves a bit of a challenge, then all you need to do is add the numbers together and divide by 2, and you will therefore have the midway number. Now you might find you have a decimal number, which is absolutely fine, so don't be deterred if you get that. Now when to use a median? Well, we'll use the median again when you have numerical data, when you've got numbered data, and it's best to use when the range is large. Now the reason why the median is better for this is when you've got numbers that are really small or really large, that they can sometimes skew the mean. So what the median does, it eliminates those sort of really small numbers or really large numbers, so you get a more accurate average. Now the mode, this is where you pick the highest or the most common number, or the number with the highest frequency, and it's possible to have no mode. Now if you have no mode, you need to make sure you write no mode rather than writing 0, which is a common mistake, because 0, if you have numerical data, might be one of the numbers that are in there. And also theoretically that the mode should stand out from the others. So if you've got a list of numbers of, let's say 2, 2, 3, 2, 2 and go from there, you can see that the 3, although it's the highest number, doesn't really stand out from the other two. So it's got to be visibly higher than the others. However, it's quite a dubious answer, so I would usually go for writing whichever number gives you, or numbers give you, the highest frequency. Now when to use this? So you tend to use the mode when you've got categorical data, when you've got worded out data. So for example, like colours of a car or favourite subject, etc. But the mode is probably the most E, because obviously you can't add the numbers up or order them in numerical data, which is why the mode is definitely used there. With regards to now the methods of how we actually work out these three from a table data, now I'm going to go through, now what might be worth doing is you making a note of these steps. The steps at face value might not make any sense to you, but when we go through some examples, it's kind of just gives you a bit of a foundation or a bit of a flow on how to work out these two. But like I said, if there's any of those steps that make absolutely zero sense to you at all, fear not, because I will go through them in the example. Now the one thing to note is the notation. Now when you start moving into high level maths, that they tend to use, you may have seen this on Excel, this symbol that looks like this. Now that basically is a mathematical symbol of the sum of, or the total of. So that is just a mathematical symbol to say that you've added up the numbers that are in the list or in the column to give you that total. So when it says the sum of f, and that's how you usually say it, so this is a Greek symbol, that's basically sigma. So sigma f is basically going to be the total of f, and sigma fx rather is the total sum of fx. Now again, don't worry too much if you're still in your early years of mathematics. When you move on to high, it's just when you come to formulas and you look through websites or revision guides, they might have a formula that represents how you work out the mean from group data or tabulated data. So it's just making, but again, I'll go through this when we go through an example, which is what we're going to do now. So starting off with frequency table. Now frequency table and group data, well, it's easy and common sense should tell you which is which. Now with a frequency table, you'll only have a single list of numbers in the first column. So as you can see, we've got 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now in this particular question, we want to work out the mean, the mode, the median and the range. Now the median is probably a little bit higher level. The mean and the mode is probably what you expected, but again, depending on what level you're working at, we'll also work out how you work out the range as well. So working out the mean, I'll try and do this in different colours. So let's go for red for the mean. So for step 1, what we need to do is add up the frequency. So if we add up the total frequency, now everything I'm going to write in a different colour is basically what you would get marks for in the exam. Now in the exam or in a test, or in a textbook even, the only thing you'll be given is these two columns. Now depending on how many marks are on offer, they may give you the total frequency, they may not. But if not, then it means you're going to get a mark for it. So what we need to do is work out the total frequency. So if we add these numbers up, we've got 3, 8, 14, 16, 17. So not the nicest number, but there you go. Now the next, so that's step 1. Step 2 is then creating this fx column. And this is step 2. Now fx is basically, well, your first column is always x, and your frequency is the f. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to multiply these two numbers. Now the reason why we call it fx, not xf, even though xf is probably what we're actually working with, is because it's just alphabetical order. So all we're going to do now is to work our fx values, we're just going to multiply the number in the first column by the number in the second column. So here we've got 0 times 3, which is 0, 1 times 5, which is 5, 2 times 6, which is 12, 6 and 4. And these are our third step. Now fourth step is then to work out the total fx. So all I'm going to do now is work out this total. So I'm going to add these numbers up. So I've got 0 plus 5 is 5, 17, 23, 27. Now to work out the mean, all I need to do is divide the total fx. Now this, if I use a different colour, this number here is my sigma fx. In other words, the total of the fx column. And this number here is sigma f, which is the total of the frequency column. So the mean, using a formula, is calculated by sigma fx over sigma f. And again, if you're not too comfortable using sigma, you can use total of. So it's going to be 27 over 17. Now if we type that into our calculator, so we've got 27 divided by 17, we get an answer of 1.58823, and that continues. Now with maths, I always say that to do well in maths, it's about 65% knowledge, 35% common sense. Now common sense, looking at this table, is you checking to see how valid is your final answer, because it's very, very easy for you to make a mistake because you've got numbers and calculations coming out of everywhere. Now all three averages should be a number between your smallest value, which is the 0, and the biggest number in your first column. So all of your averages should be between, in this case, 0 and 4. Now the average, looking at the mean, should be around now this is not always the case, but again, more often than not, is always around the number with the highest frequency. So as we can see, that the number with the highest frequency is 2, so we're looking for a number that is close to 2, which actually this is. Now another question I often get asked is, when do we round, when do we not? Now personally, when you've substituted numbers into the formula and you get a decimal number, I would certainly start by writing that decimal number out. You don't need to go crazy by writing every single number that's shown on your calculator, but I certainly would write in the kind of similar fashion here. Now because we're dealing with pets, now pets is a physical object in which you can't have decimal number of pets. So what I would do here is I would round this up to the nearest pet, and so your answer would be 2 pets. Now for the mode, the mode, as we said, is the column with the highest frequency. Now as we can see, the numbers with the highest frequency are 1 and 2. So for this, the mode is going to be 6. Now there is argument to suggest that you could write 1 and 2 because physically they do stand out, but at say the KS3 and GCSE level, You probably don't need to think about too hard because, like I said, there'll be arguments for and against it. Just go for whichever number is the one with the highest frequency. Now, to find the median, which is classed as a high level sort of calculation from tabulated data, what we kind of need to do is understand this table. Now, the median is where you order the numbers in order and you find the middle number. Now, in a table, it's going to be quite difficult. So one way, but a very time consuming way, is to convert this tabulated data into a list of numbers. So what we want to do is look at the number of pets, look at the frequencies. Now, the frequency is how many of these numbers we have. And so converting this table into a list of numbers, we've got 3 zeros, so 1, 2, 3. I've got 5 ones, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 twos, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 threes and 1 4. Now what I want to do is I want to find the middle number from this list, and as you can see, it's already ordered numerically, which is the advantage of having a table. And what we need to do is find this out. Now, if the total frequency is a large number, we've got 17 numbers, and that hasn't really taken me long to write those numbers out. However, you might have a table where the frequency is going to be like 56 or 47, and you really won't have the time to write out those numbers from this list. So one way and a quick way of doing this is to first add up the frequency. So we've got 17 people and we want to divide that by 2. Now if I divide 17 by 2, what I get is 8.5. Now I'm looking for the 8.5th person. Now in other words, what I'm looking for is the 9th position. Now the 9th position will give me what the median value is going to be. So if I count 9, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm looking for the median being 2. Now from this, what we want to look at is I can find out the median by counting along the frequency columns. So here I've got 3, then I've got 8, then I've got 14, then I've got 16, and then I've got 17. So all this is like a running total. Now from this, what I want to work out is under what group would number 9 be. Now looking from these running total, I can see that the 9th person is going to be in this group here. And so the median is therefore going to be 2. Never 6, always 2, because this is the number of pets that we're looking at. Now for the for the range, now the range is calculated, let's just get a different colour pen. Let's go for orange. So for the range, all we need to do here is basically using the first column is subtract the largest number and the smallest number. So here the range is going to be 4, take away 0, which is 4. And that's basically how we calculate the all the 3 averages and the range from a frequency table. So what we could do now is have a look at another example. Now in this example you can see that we've got slightly bigger numbers, and writing numbers out is going to be a little bit difficult, and let's just show how we actually work this out. Now if you want to pause the video to work this out yourself or have a go yourself, that's entirely up to you. What I'm going to do now is just go through how we work out each of these. So for the mean, what we need to do is first of all total up those numbers. So I've got 8 plus 6 plus 3 plus 9 plus 16, which is 42. Now looking at this, I can see that the most popular number is going to be 32, so I'm looking for an answer that is close to 32. However, that is not always going to be the case, but I am looking for an answer, all 3 averages, so all 3 averages are going to be between 24 and 32. So if I get any number that's outside 24 or 32, I know I've definitely gone wrong somewhere. So to work out the mean, I've worked out the total frequency. The next thing I need to do is work on my fx column. So for this, 24 times 8 is 192. 29 times 6 is 174. 30 times 3 is 90. 31 times 9 is 279, and 32 times 16 equals 512. Now again, we're going to have some very big numbers in this, but do not be deterred. As long as when you work out your final answer it's a number between 24 and 32 in this particular instance, then there's a good chance I haven't made a mistake. So here we get an answer of 1247. So the mean is going to be 1247 divided by 42, which gives me an answer of 29.6904761. I'm sure that continues. So looking at this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round this up because we're looking at students, so it's going to be 30 students. And you could write to no decimal places. Looks like a D. And there's your final answer. For the mode, well, we can see here that the mode is going to be 32. For the median, now again, writing out 42 numbers is going to be a pain. So all I'm going to do is use a bit smartness. So it's going to be 42 divided by 2, which is 21. So I'm looking for the 21st person to find out which group it's going to be. So here I've got 8, then I'm going to have 14, then I'm going to have 17, then I'm going to have 26, and then I'm going to have 42. So looking at 21, now 21 is going to fall in this category here. So the median equals, now the key thing to remember is this median value I've worked out is the position, not the actual median value. So the median in this case is going to be 31. Now obviously because you've got numbers all over the place, it's always worth highlighting what your final answer is going to be, but also showing working out as well. And finally for the range, it's going to be 32 take away 24, which is going to give you an answer of 8. Let's just highlight that as well. Now when you're dealing with group data, the method for the median, the mode and the range is going to be exactly the same. The range is slightly different, but we'll talk about that once we get to it. However, the mean is the one that's more prominently slightly different with a bit of a tweak. So the steps in which I'm going to do to find out the mean from group data is as follows. And like I said, if you want to make a note of these steps, then please do pause the video and you can make a note of them. But we'll be recording each of these steps as we go on. So let's have a look at an example. So in this particular case, we've been asked to find the mean, the mode, the median, the range of the following set of data. So I mean, the data we've been given is the weights of a group of people is measured as follows. Now, with regards to this set of data, to work out the mean first, now in this, we're not really given much anything else apart from this raw data. Now, it's important you understand what this table shows. Now, for this is the fact that the data has been grouped, so we don't actually know. All we know is that there's 2 people in this group of 40 to 50. So these 2 people could be 40, well actually it could just be over 40, but it could be 42 and 47, it could be 45 and 46, it could be 47.5 and 49.999. We don't really know. All we know is that it's between 40 and 50. Now with regards to inequalities, it's important to understand what each of these mean. Now with inequalities, anything with an inequality that's been underlined means it can be that number. So for example, if you weighed 50 kilograms, then you would fall into this first category. Whereas for this first column, it's between 40 and 50. It's got to be bigger than 40, but it can be 50. For the second column, it's between 50 and 60. It can't be 50 exactly, but it can be 60 exactly, and etc. Now, for these, because we don't know the raw values of each of these particular sets of data, we have to kind of guess what number each of these are going to be. Now, what these 2 people are going to be, what the 15 people are going to be, what the 19 people are going to be. So what we do is we just assume that they are going to be in the middle of each group. Now, with regards to labelling this, now the first number in the group is what we call the lower bound. And the number on the right of the inequality is what we call the upper bound. So to get started on this, the first thing we need to do is add the frequency. So if we add the numbers in the frequency all together, we get a total of 47. Now you're going to end up with quite a few columns. So the first thing we need to do, so everything in red is basically what you'd be expected to do. So just calculating 47 would probably get you 1 mark. Now, because we don't know the exact values, what I need to do is work out the midpoint. So I need to create a midpoint column. Now, the midpoint is basically the middle number between your upper bound and your lower bound. And now, if you're not too sure now, usually you can use your common sense to work out what number is going to be in the middle. But if you're ever unsure, just add the upper bound and the lower bound together and divide by 2. Now, don't worry about the inequalities, so don't start messing around with, let's say, 40.00001 and 50. Just take it as face value. So it's basically the number that's between 40 and 50, which is 45. Next one we've got 55, next one we've got 65, next one we've got 75, and the next one we've got 85. Now, with regards to this column is our F, and your midpoint column is now going to be your X. Now, in the previous example when we had frequency data, your first column was your X values. Now, in group data, your midpoint is going to be your X values. And then all we then need to do is create our FX column. Now, the FX column is created in the exact same way. So all I need to do here is multiply the frequency numbers by the midpoint, and that will give me the FX value. So the first one, we should have 2 times 45, which is 90, 15 times 55, which is 825, 19 times 65 is 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 times 75 is 750, and 1 times 85 is 85. So now if I just add those numbers up, I get a total FX value of 3015. Now again, this number here is my total F, and this number here is my total of FX. Now, just like we mentioned before, when you're working with 3 averages, my 3 averages need to be a number between 40, the smallest value, and 90 as the biggest value. So with all my 3 averages, if I ended up with a number that's outside 40 and 90, I've definitely gone wrong somewhere. Now also what I notice is that the group with the highest frequency is the 60 to 70. So I'm looking for an answer for the mean that's roughly close to 60 and 70. So let's have a look if that is the case. So to work out the mean, I need to use the formula of sigma fx divided by sigma f, which in this case is going to be 3015 divided by 47, and 3015 divided by 47 gives me an answer of 64.14893617. Now again, it's really good practice for you to write down whatever's shown on your calculator. Now, because we're dealing with weight, and weight is continuous data, so it could be any number within a given range, I'm actually going to round this number up to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to do 1.5 kilograms. Now, it doesn't matter whether you choose, there's nothing in the question that states how you need to round your answer up, but if you have rounded your answer up, make sure you're always stating what you've rounded up to. So I've chosen to do 2 decimal places. If I wanted 1 decimal place, it would be 64.1 kilograms, and that would be to 1 decimal place. If you want to round it up to no decimal places, so the nearest whole number, that's fine, but make sure you're always, 1, checking to see if there's a particular request in the question how they want you to round the answer up, but if there isn't, you literally can write down whatever you want. You could even get away with writing the answer that comes up on your calculator. However, I wouldn't recommend it because it is good practice for you to round, especially when you get a long decimal answer that you've got there. Now for number 2, the mode. Now with the mode, because we don't have exact values, we don't know which number has the highest frequency. So rather than working with the mode with group data, instead what we have is the modal class, or known as the modal group. So it doesn't really matter which you want to call it, but it could be classed as each of these. And this is basically which group has got the highest frequency. Well, we've already established that the 60 to 70 group has got the highest. So the mode is going to be 60 to 70. And again, I would write your answer as inequality, making sure your inequality signs are exact. And again, if you want to write down the units, that's absolutely fine as well. Now the median is done the exact same way. So the first thing I need to do is add up the total frequency, which I have, which is 47. So the median position is going to be 47 divided by 2, which is 23.5. So I need to find out which group would my 23rd or 24th person be. So again, doing a running total, I've got 2, 17, and then I'm going to end up with 36, and 46, and then 47. So as you can see, the 24th person is going to fall in the 60 to 70 group. Now it's not great in terms of the numbers I've chosen, so it's going to fall into that group there. So the median is going to be the 60 to 70th group. That's where the median is going to be. Now for these questions, it would usually, because the median is actually natural value, at a higher level you could work out what the median value is going to be, or with the use of a histogram you could work that out. However, if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, do not worry. So for this, they would usually, a question would ask, particularly at Key Stage 3 or maybe at low level GCSE, they would ask which group would the median value fall into. In this case it would be 60 to 70. And then finally for the range, which I haven't got much space, so I'm going to do it up here. So again, it's 40, take away the highest value, which is 90, so it's 90 take away 40, which equals 50. And again, as you can see, I've got numbers all over the place, so it's really good practice for you to highlight your answers to each of those questions. So moving on to our last example of group data, let's have a look at this one. Thankfully there's not that many columns, so it should be okay. So for this, what we need to do is first of all set up our column, so let's just call it mid. So here I've got middle number between 120 and 140, which is 130. I've got 150, 170 and 190. And one thing I forgot to do was the total column for the frequency, so that's going to be 20, 25, 32. And the next thing I've then got to do is my FX column. And again, we work out the FX column by multiplying the frequency by the midpoint. So it's going to be 260, 5 times 150, which is 750, 18 times 170, which is 3060, and 190 times 7, which is 1330. So the only thing I've now got left to do is to work out what that total is going to be. So if I just add them all up, I get a total of 5,400. It's quite a nice number. Now again, for each of the averages, I'm expecting a number that's going to be between 120 and 200. So anything outside that range is going to be wrong. I'm also looking for the mean to be around the 160 or 180. Why? Because that's the one with the highest frequency. So again, go for that. That's not fixed in stone, it's just using a bit of common sense. So to work out the mean, I need to do the sigma of fx divided by sigma f. So it's the total of fx column, which is 5400. Or 00, and the total of the frequency, which is 32. And if I type that into my calculator, again I'm expecting an answer between 120 and 200, and I get an answer of 168.75. Now for this, actually a terminating decimal, so I'm just going to leave it as this, and I'm just going to write down the units there. Now if you want to round up your answer, you could round it up to 168 rather, 0.8 centimetres to 1 decimal place, but that's entirely up to you. Personally, because there's only 2 numbers after the decimal point, I'd leave the exact value. For number 2, for the mode, so the modal class is the one with the most popular, and that's going to be 160 to, oh, I don't know where to put a line there, to 180. For the median, so again, I'm going to do 32, which is the total, divided by 2, which is 16. So I'm looking for which group would the 16th person be in. So again, doing a running total, I've got 2, 7, and it's going to be 25, and then 32. So my 16th person is going to fall in that category there. So the median value is going to exist in the group of 160 to 180. So just like for there, so that's not the median value, that's simply where the median lies in the group of 160 to 180. And again, something I keep forgetting to do is highlighting your answers. And finally, the range is going to be the highest number, which is 200, or highest possible value, take away the smallest, which gives us a range of 80. And there you go. So again, there are some very sort of things you might notice that are very common. So for example, the modal class tends to be the same as the median class. May not always be the case. Also, that the mean may not always lie in the modal class. It all depends on the distribution of the numbers and the frequency. So for example, if you've got a high frequency in the low groups and also a high frequency in the high groups, you'll find that the mean will lie somewhere in the middle. But again, common sense is all three averages will always be between the lowest of the lowest bounds and the highest of the highest bounds for you to check which is your answer is going to be. But again, common sense really does prevail, particularly in statistic topics, about using your common sense of what looks at right and having a good guess of what your answers should look like.